Hi, this is Dan McKenzie. I'm the owner and sole practitioner at the McKenzie Law Firm in Denver, Colorado. And in this video, I'm going to be going over some basics about how you can instruct in your estate plan your assets to be distributed to your kids and to their descendants. The usual situation here, and the one that you probably are hoping for, is that when you die, if you have kids, those kids will all still be alive. And if that happens, that's kind of the easy situation, because basically most people in their estate plan are going to say something along the lines of, I leave my estate to each of my kids equally. So that's illustrated by this situation here, where you've got 3 kids, they're all alive, and they each get 1/3. And you can see that they also have kids of their own. They each have a different number of kids, but that actually doesn't have any impact here because the distribution is easily made at this top level here. Where this gets a little trickier is in a situation like this, where one or more kids might actually predecease you. So they are already dead at the time that you pass away. And that's illustrated here with kid 3 still being alive, but kid 1 and 2 no longer being alive. So the question is, what happens now? Does kid 3 get everything that kid 1 and kid 2 were supposed to get, or should kid 1 and kid 2's gifts go to their kids? And if it's going to go to their kids, then how do you split it down here? Should they each get the same amount, or should these 2 kids have to split it among themselves? So there are several different options that states will typically default to. One of the most common early ones was called per stirpes distribution. And per stirpes is just a fancy Latin term meaning by the root. And it is what it sounds like. You look at your family tree, you look at the number of branches at the top level here, and then what happens is you divide the assets equally among each of those branches. And what's going on down here won't actually impact what each branch gets. So in this scenario, kid 3 is still alive, so this branch goes to him, and he gets 1/3. Now, kid 2 and kid 1 are passed away, and so they each get 1/3, but then their thirds are going to go down to the next generation. And for kid 2, who has only 1 kid, that means this kid down here is going to get 1/3. Whereas kid 1's third is going to be divided further between his 2 kids, and they're each going to get 1/6. And so that might not be what you want, because as you can see down here, these 3 kids are really in the same situation. They've got a parent who's deceased, and they meanwhile get different amounts. Kid 3 is going to get 1/3, and these 2 are going to get 1/6. And where that really starts to look unfair is in a situation like this, where you've got 3 kids, all of them predeceased you, and so each of their thirds is going to go down to their kids. And in this situation, it's going to be divided by 3. Here it's going to be divided by 1, and then kid 1, it's going to be divided by 2. So grandkid number 3 here gets 1/3, whereas grandkids 4, 5, and 6 only get 1/9. And again, this is despite the fact that they really have similar situations. That might not be what you want. You might want more equality among this generation. So some states have gone to a different rule, per capita by representation, and Colorado is actually one of the states at which this is the default. And it's different in different states, so you need to be careful, and you need to check with your state to make sure you know which one would happen if you were to die without a will, or if you are drafting a will, to make sure you work correctly around the rules that are in place. So per capita by representation, what happens is you go to the first generation that has someone alive, and then you count the number of branches in that generation and then distribute equally among those branches. So in this scenario, where you've got kid 3 alive, this is the first generation with someone living, the division is going to be made by 1/3, and what you end up with is actually the exact same thing as under the per stirpes distribution, where these kids are not actually going to get the same amount. But where you can see a difference is in this scenario, where each of the 3 kids is deceased. So there's no one alive at this generation, so we just skip it entirely, and we go down to the next generation to see if someone's alive there. Everyone's alive here, and so we make the distribution at this point, and all 6 grandkids are going to get the same amount. So that might be more along the lines of what you think is fair. And so this might be what you want to choose. There is another variation on this called per capita at each generation. And what happens here is, again, we'll go to the first generation and see, where someone's living and see how many people are in it, and we'll make the division. And so again, we get 1/3 here and 2/3 for these two. But instead of dividing the 2/3 that remain after this kid's gotten his share, we go down to the next generation and go to the kids who are not yet accounted for and make the division here again. So instead of dividing up here, we go down here, and now each of these kids gets the same amount, 2/9, which adds up to 2/3 remaining from here. These kids theoretically will be taken care of by their parent, who is now, he can make the decision about what they should get, if anything, from this distribution. So, and then on this variation where all 3 kids are dead, again, we go down to the first generation that has someone living, and we make the distribution there. And in this scenario, since everybody's living in this generation, each will get 1/6, and the entire estate will be accounted for. So that's sort of the basic way in which this works. Like I say, each state is different, and the wording that you use in your will to describe how this will work is very important. It needs to be right, and so it's very important you talk to someone to make sure that this is done correctly for you. So I hope this was helpful, and I also hope that you will visit me at themackenziefirm.com for more information. Thank you.